My brothers and sisters in Christ, while today's readings are simply both in our progression through 1 Corinthians and through the Gospel of Luke, are both just part of natural progressive readings, when joined together, we get a wonderful treatment of the Eucharist. The first reading, Paul speaks of the divisions amongst the Corinthians, their abuse in the household of God, the way they come together to share Eucharist, and in fact that they don't, that they use it just as a communal meal to continue to divide, neglect, enjoy advantage over each other, and fall into factions. And then he contrasts it with the image of the Eucharist from the Last Supper. Here is where we get Paul's short rendition of the institution narrative of the Eucharist from the Last Supper. And so, in this, there is an image of Jesus fully given. There's the image which is pure gift from Jesus to his disciples, not for one, not for this one, but taken and given freely. When we combine this with the gospel, we see the image of the centurion, one that is not of the household, not the source where one would expect to find a great response of faith. So often Jesus is encountering the very people of the household of Israel he's come to save and finds no faith, no response. And yet an unexpected source with this centurion, he gets a profound response of faith. And we may not understand it. Why is Jesus so amazed? Because the centurion, when he says, like so many approaches with a prayer request, to heal my servant, many people do that. Jesus agrees to come along to heal, but the centurion says, no need. You don't need to come, have to come walk to the house or come to the servant, but only say the word and my servant shall be healed. He recognizes, and that's what he goes on to say, he recognizes authority, that Jesus is not a magician or a healer or a good doctor in the earthly sense, but that Jesus has authority over the illness of his servant, that merely by willing it, it is done. This is an acknowledgement of the identity of Jesus. He's not just a performer of miracles, but he is Lord. This is why Jesus is so shocked that in this man, who should, by all reckoning, have no such faith, he does. And it's captured in the response that we carry over into every Mass we celebrate. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word. And so, when we take these two things together, we're reminded, I think, of a couple of practical reminders. One, which is when we say that before the reception of Holy Communion at every Mass, we're reminded that none of us are worthy to approach. It's not our worthiness that brings us Holy Communion. Now, all of us are unworthy. Now, that's setting aside if we're in the state of mortal sin or we're not, for one reason or another, not in a state of full communion. That's another reason not to receive. And that's for a topic for another day, a very important one. But even if we're in the state of grace, we're still not worthy. We can't be worthy to receive the Eucharist, but it is freely given to us, to those seeking, to those in communion, striving. The gift is given. And so when I say that, I realize I have not earned this. I cannot, and I am no better than anyone around me. I'm not better than the priest. I'm not better than my family members, my friends, the people wandering around the church, the people annoying me. We approach the sacrament as sinners in need of God's love. And so we say, I am not worthy. But then when we receive this great gift, we are brought into communion, which is what the very word says. To break down that reality which Paul speaks of and condemns in the first reading, our divisions, our ways in which we hold superior, the ways we neglect those in need. We are brought into oneness, to love each other in a real, authentic way. And then, practically speaking, this speaks to, as Paul condemns, our ability of eating and drinking at their own time, not to begin until everyone there is present. Our need at Mass to be present beginning to end, not just to observe the Lord's Day, but to be there in the fullness of prayer from the beginning, to gather the intention of the community at the altar beforehand, and to remain to the end. Because at Mass, it is not an individual experience or exercise. It's not just some prayers I sit through before I go and take my spot in the communion line and leave. But it is truly a communal, an ecclesial act that is happening, that is realized finally through the reception of Holy Communion as individuals. But the act of the Mass, the act of communion, of Eucharist, is joint. And therefore, we never undertake it alone. And instead, we put ourselves in that disposition to receive all that the Lord wishes to offer us and to prepare ourselves to make a response. May God bless you all.